National Development Plan is South Africa's overarching policy blueprint, which aims to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality in the country by the year 2030. Presenting an update of the document's 10-year review to President Cyril Ramaphosa on Monday, the chairperson of the National Planning Commission, Maropene, Ramokgopa, saying that one of the major findings of the review is the failure of the economy to grow at the rate required for the objectives of the NDP to materialize. Well, the Minister, Maropene Ramokgopa, joining me now to highlight some of those outcomes. Minister, good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So, what are the proposals in order for South Africa's economy to grow at a pace that is required for the country to eliminate some of the challenges mentioned in that introduction? What are you proposing?
Okay. Thank you very much, Xoli, and good morning to everyone. We are proposing a number of issues, but I'll just stick to maybe just three. One of it being, of course, to ensure that we do improve on the structural issues that affect how government actually work, while also raising the issues of making sure that we do speak to the issues of energy, and that meaning that we need to stick to the agreed growth of what is it that needs to be implemented as it relates to energy mix. We are speaking to issues of licensing. We're also speaking to the issues that speaks to water as well, meaning that we also have to make sure that we align the structures of national government and local government as it relates to the water department itself, so that whatever it is that local government concentrate on, for example, we have raised the issue that local government most of the time concentrate on groundwater, whereas national government plan on issues of water that are above surface. So we need to ensure that we bring those two together. We've also raised issues about the bills that have been passed, one of it being the NHI, while raising the issues of governance there that might maybe bring unintended consequences, such as corruption, because when you place everything in one person, the minister, it might really bring unintended consequences. So we're also raising the issues of fiscal trajectory on what is it that we need to do to protect the fiscal trajectory of South Africa. So those are some of the things that we have highlighted, including the issues of unemployment and the issues of nutrition and ECD education in general.
Well, key to solving these major challenges, Minister Ramokgopa, is implementation. And the government in which you serve is on record as saying that that is a major challenge for our country, implementation. And so if you look at infrastructure, for example, which is the issue that you dealt with first, we are in the Northwest. Just before coming to you, we were in the Northwest province where there are water challenges there, whether it be quality or distributing it to the people, including road infrastructure. That is crumbling. And therefore, do we have the capacity to implement the solutions that are being proposed?
We do believe that there is capacity, but on how it is utilized, that's what the NPC has actually raised. They've raised the issue of the implementation, as you rightfully said, especially of the framework of public service, in terms of how do we then now make sure that that which we have agreed upon should actually be done. So what we have agreed upon with the President, of course, was that we need to bring back the NDP to be the lodestar that guides us in terms of what needs to be done. We don't only just have to come and be creative in how we do things, but we've also agreed that it becomes important that the public service must then now be professionalized. Yes, of course, there have been a number of processes that have been put in place, but we just need to make sure that on the strategic positions, we don't deviate. But we have also agreed, as I said, that we need to play our role much more robustly. We shouldn't only meet the president after 12 months or few months, but we should be able to meet the president as much as possible, including presenting our very own diagnostic reports to cabinet to ensure that periodically, to ensure that we diagnose the problem and we present it to them. But then the president did, of course, promise us as the authority that he will definitely make sure that whatever it is that we come to present as diagnostic reports will definitely be put in front of cabinet, and we will then now be able to monitor the performance of that which we have been able to raise. So we do believe that there is definitely going to be improvement, precisely because of the structural issues that will have to be improved in terms of how we play our advisory role to cabinet and most of all to the president.
Minister Ramokgopa, it can't be lost on us, you and me, but more importantly the nation, that you lead the National Planning Commission. And I want to use the word planning as being the operative word here. In terms of planning, when we talk the energy crisis that we're in as a country, I'm sure there is an obvious admission that there was a failure to plan around energy issues. How do we plan better moving forward?
We do believe that since the establishment of NECOM, definitely there have been improvement, and I think that's where government really saw that they need to do something in order to make sure that all the structures that are put in place to deal with energy must then now be coordinated. We have raised that issue of coordination, and we welcome the fact that if all goes well, the issues of energy would then now be placed in one department soon. But we have also said that we believe that we need to continue to make sure that whatever decisions that we take, for example, we have taken a decision that we are going to bring an energy mix where we will do fossil fuel, but we will also make sure that we do mix with alternative energy. And we have put percentages in place to say that maybe 60% of whatever generation that we make needs to then now be in alternative energy. But of course, that would be a transition. But what we have said is that indeed better planning must be done. However, NECOM must continue with what it's doing, and the issues of energy should be placed in what department. We have also agreed indeed that we need to start now to put plans in place to deal with the issues of transmission, because we shouldn't only be found looking at generation. So when transmission then has to happen, then we have a problem. So the issue that was decided upon in terms of unbundling ESCOM, so that transmission can be something else, generation should be something else, for better coordination and for better implementation, we need to make sure that we fast track that. And we did agree that indeed we will continue to be on the neck of government, as much as I'm part of government, but the NPC itself as an independent body, to ensure that they remind government that this is where you are supposed to be. It looks like you are not doing what you are supposed to do. That's how we are going to improve implementation.
All right. Let's talk corruption. This is a 10-year review that you presented to the president. And we know that in the 10 years from which we have come, there was state capture in the country. The president, whom you report to, spoke about 9 wasted years, of which at least the 5, I think he was part of. So my question to you is, what about corruption is this government going to do in order to eliminate it?
We've raised 2 issues. One is that we need to put better governance structures in place. Like as I've already said, we raised the issue of NHI to say that it can't be that the minister, when you talk about NHI, would deal with the appointment of the board, would deal with legislation, would deal with the fund. We need to make sure that at least we unpack that and be able to say that maybe Parliament need to deal with the issue of the board, or someone else must deal with the board. So the issues of governance structures of government itself, of the state, we have raised that sharply, and we have said that we will definitely come up with steps that we believe needs to be put in place so that we deal away with the issues of corruption, because we do believe that corruption happens when governance is not strong. But we have also raised the issue to say that it looks like South African education system only produces or look at the issues of producing academics, but we don't look at building character. We need to make sure that whatever it is that we do, especially when it relates to building public service, we need to also deal with the issue of instilling a certain character in a person. Because whenever you would then now look, you'd get brilliant people that were working for government, and we know they are brilliant, but then corruption is the issue.
Minister
and
Ramokgopa.
That has to do with character.
Minister
That's what we
Ramokgopa.
have said.
Let me refine the question around corruption.
Okay.
Let me refine it and say it to you this way. In your 10-year review of this NDP, which is South Africa's policy lodestar, how big an impact has corruption had in the entire functioning of government? Do you have perhaps a figure you can point to, or perhaps things to point at to say, this is how devastating corruption has been for our country in the public sector space?
We do not have, I don't have percentages that I can give you, but as I've already said, we did mention that corruption has played a very big role, and it's part of the things, corruption and crime in particular, in the growth of the economy, precisely because it has affected how government does work. Not only government, but also collusion in the private sector itself. This is why we are saying that governance structures that we put in place, whether you governance structures that are the board or the minister who appoints, or the funds that actually are regulated, that's where corruption happens. We are saying that we need to look at that and make sure that we remove some of the powers from certain structures and make sure that not one structure should handle one issue. And I gave an example, of course, in terms of NHI. So that's what we are saying. It has played a very big role in impacting on how government should do things, but also in private sector. And we have said that improving governance structures and making sure that we unpack it and divide it accordingly is the only way that we will be able to deal with corruption.
Final question. Former President Thabo Mbeki said that the NDP is, to him, based on his assessment of it, is a vision for the country, as opposed to a policy document, a blueprint for policy in the country. Do you agree with his assessment?
A vision, a blueprint is the same thing in our view. That is why it's called Vision 2030, the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan is a plan of the country, which is a lodestar. Then you would then now have the MTSF cycle that would then now deal with the application part of it, where policies would be put in place to implement that particular vision that we have. If you're not going to be able to have plans that are long-term, that informs policy and whatever it is that is legislation that you need to put in place, you will not be able to go far. That is why even globally you would have SGDs, and in African Union we would have Agenda 2063. It is definitely a vision that we are supposed to make sure that by 2030, government should have been able to achieve certain things, and the instruments that would be used will be policies and legislation that we put in place to be able to implement those goals that we have set out for ourselves, which is definitely a vision. It is definitely a plan. Hence, we call it Vision 2030.
Maropene, Ramokgopa, thank you very much for your time. Minister in the presidency responsible for planning and monitoring, including evaluation.